Natalie Torres had exactly 7 minutes to get to the most important meeting of her career, and she was hopelessly lost in a part of downtown she had never ventured into before. Her GPS had died 3 turns ago, her phone battery was at 2%, and the sleek black Mercedes she normally drove was in the shop, leaving her in a rental car she barely knew how to operate. The neighborhood around her looked nothing like the polished business district where she spent most of her time. Small shops with faded awnings lined the streets, children played on cracked sidewalks, and the buildings seemed to lean together like old friends sharing secrets. She pulled over near a small playground where a man sat on a bench, his attention focused on a little girl who was climbing enthusiastically on the jungle gym. Natalie took a deep breath, smoothed down her ivory power suit, and stepped out of the car on her designer heels. The man looked up as she approached, and for a moment, she forgot what she was going to ask. He was handsome in an unpolished way, with dark hair that curled slightly at the edges and hazel eyes that held both warmth and wariness. His jeans were worn but clean, his flannel shirt rolled up to reveal strong forearms, and there was a dusting of stubble along his jaw that made him look rugged and real in a way the men in her circles never did. "Excuse me," Natalie said, her voice coming out more breathless than she intended. "I'm trying to get to the financial district. I'm completely turned around and my phone just died." The man stood up, and she realized he was tall, well over 6 feet. He had an easy, confident way of moving that suggested he was comfortable in his own skin. "You're pretty far off course," he said, his voice a pleasant baritone. "The financial district is about 20 minutes from here if you know the right roads." "Daddy, watch me," the little girl called from the top of the slide. "I'm watching, Emma." He called back, keeping one eye on his daughter while turning back to Natalie. "Okay, so you're going to want to take Main Street East until you hit the old factory district. Then you'll turn right on Riverside." Natalie's mind was racing, trying to hold on to the directions while also becoming acutely aware that she was staring at his mouth as he spoke. "I'm sorry, could you maybe write that down? I'm already running late, and I am terrible with directions." The man, who introduced himself as Ryan Walker, pulled out a slightly crumpled receipt from his pocket and borrowed a pen from Natalie's purse to sketch out a simple map. His hand moved with surprising precision, and she noticed his fingers were calloused, the hands of someone who worked with them. "What do you do?" she found herself asking, even though every second counted. "Construction," Ryan said simply. "I'm between jobs right now, but I've got some leads, nothing you'd need to worry about." There was no bitterness in his voice, just a statement of fact. Emma came running over, her pigtails bouncing. "Daddy, I'm thirsty." "We'll get some water in just a minute, sweetheart," Ryan said gently, his entire demeanor softening as he looked at his daughter. The girl was perhaps 5 or 6, with her father's hazel eyes and a gap-toothed smile that was absolutely infectious. Natalie checked her watch and felt her stomach drop. 4 minutes. "Thank you so much for your help," she said, taking the makeshift map. "I really appreciate it." "No problem," Ryan said, already turning his attention back to Emma. "Good luck with whatever meeting you're racing to." Natalie hurried back to her car, but before she pulled away, she glanced in the rearview mirror one more time. Ryan had lifted Emma onto his shoulders, and the little girl was giggling as he spun her around gently. There was something about the scene that lodged itself in her chest, a strange ache she couldn't quite name. She made it to the meeting with 90 seconds to spare, and despite her frazzled state, she delivered the presentation that would secure a $20 million investment for her company. Her business partners congratulated her, her assistant brought her celebratory coffee, and by all accounts, it should have been one of the best days of her professional life. But all through the presentations and the handshakes and the toasts, Natalie kept thinking about a man in a playground with kind eyes and a daughter on his shoulders. That night, alone in her penthouse apartment that overlooked the city, Natalie found the crumpled receipt with Ryan's directions still in her purse. She smoothed it out on her marble countertop, tracing the lines he had drawn with her fingertip. It was ridiculous, really. She had spoken to him for maybe 5 minutes. He was a stranger, a man from a completely different world than hers. She had no reason to think about him again, but she did. She thought about him the next day during her meetings, and the day after that, when she was reviewing quarterly reports. She thought about the gentle way he had spoken to his daughter, the lack of apology in his voice when he mentioned being between jobs, the quiet strength that seemed to emanate from him. 2 weeks later, Natalie found herself driving through that same neighborhood again, though she told herself it was because she wanted to explore a new lunch spot her assistant had mentioned. The playground was empty when she drove by, and she felt an absurd disappointment that she immediately tried to dismiss. She parked near a small diner that looked like it had been there since the 1950s and went inside. The place was full of character, with red vinyl booths and a checkerboard floor. A waitress with kind eyes and a name tag that read Dolores showed her to a booth by the window. Natalie ordered a coffee and a sandwich, pulling out her tablet to review some contracts, but her attention kept drifting to the window. The neighborhood had a rhythm to it that was different from the business district. People actually stopped to talk to each other. A woman pushing a stroller paused to chat with an elderly man sweeping the sidewalk in front of his shop. It felt real in a way her life sometimes didn't. "Mind if we grab the booth behind you?" A familiar voice said. "Everywhere else is full." Natalie turned around so fast, she nearly knocked over her water glass. Ryan stood there with Emma beside him, both of them in casual clothes that suggested they had spent the day at the park. He recognized her immediately, and something that might have been pleasure crossed his face. "The directions, lady," Emma announced happily. "Did you find where you needed to go?" "I did," Natalie said, smiling at the little girl. "Your dad gave me excellent directions. I made it just in time." "Please sit," she added, gesturing to her own booth. "I have this whole table to myself." "It seems silly for you to squeeze into another booth when there's plenty of room here." Ryan hesitated, and she could see him weighing the offer. She realized with sudden clarity that he thought she was being charitable, that he might interpret her invitation as pity from someone who clearly had money to spare. The thought made her uncomfortable. "I would really appreciate the company," she said honestly. "I eat alone a lot. It would be nice to have someone to talk to." That seemed to decide him. Ryan and Emma slid into the booth across from her, and Emma immediately launched into a detailed description of all the activities they had done at the park that day. Ryan listened with patient attention, occasionally correcting minor exaggerations, and Natalie found herself charmed by the easy dynamic between father and daughter. "Emma, let the lady get a word in," Ryan said eventually, though his tone was affectionate rather than scolding. "It's Natalie," she offered. "And I've been enjoying Emma's story. It sounds like you two had quite an adventure." "Every day with Dad is an adventure," Emma said seriously, and Ryan's expression softened in a way that made Natalie's heart do an odd little flip. They ordered food, and as Emma colored on the paper menu with crayons the waitress provided, Natalie and Ryan fell into conversation. She learned that Emma's mother had left when Emma was just a year old, that Ryan had been raising his daughter on his own ever since. He spoke about it matter-of-factly, without drama or self-pity, but Natalie could hear the weight of those years in his voice. "She's my whole world," Ryan said simply, watching Emma with clear devotion. "Everything I do is for her." "You're doing an amazing job," Natalie said, and meant it. Emma was bright and confident and obviously felt secure in her father's love. "What about you?" Ryan asked. "What do you do that has you racing around downtown in a power suit?" Natalie found herself telling him about her company, a tech startup she had founded 7 years ago that had grown into a major player in the data security field. She was the CEO, though she admitted she had never felt entirely comfortable with the title. "I still sometimes feel like I'm playing dress-up," she confessed. "Like someone's going to walk in and tell me I'm not qualified to be in charge." "That's called imposter syndrome," Ryan said. "I read about it once. All the most successful people feel it. The fact that you feel it probably means you're taking your responsibility seriously. She was surprised by his insight and a little embarrassed by her own surprise. Just because he worked construction did not mean he was not intelligent or well-read. "What about you?" she asked. "What made you get into construction?" Ryan's hands wrapped around his coffee mug, and she noticed again how strong and capable they looked. "I like building things," he said. "I like starting with a foundation and ending with something solid and real. Plus, the hours were flexible enough that I could arrange childcare around them. When Emma started school, it got easier." "And now you're between jobs?" Natalie asked carefully, not wanting to pry but genuinely interested. "The company I was with went under last month," Ryan said. "Bad management, not enough capital. I've got some interviews lined up, though. Something will come through." He said it with confidence, but Natalie noticed the slight tension in his jaw. He was worried, even if he didn't want to show it. Emma finished her coloring and presented it to Natalie with a flourish. It was a picture of 3 stick figures, one tall with dark hair, one small with pigtails, and one with what appeared to be a very tall tower of hair. "That's you," Emma said, pointing to the figure with the elaborate hair. "You have pretty hair, like a princess." Natalie felt an unexpected warmth spread through her chest. "This is beautiful, Emma, thank you. Can I keep it?" Emma nodded enthusiastically, and Ryan smiled, that same smile that seemed to light up everything around him. They talked until Emma started to yawn, and Ryan checked his watch with surprise. 2 hours had passed without any of them noticing. Natalie could not remember the last time she had lost track of time like that, lost in easy conversation and genuine laughter. "We should get going," Ryan said reluctantly. "It's almost bedtime for someone." "I'm not tired," Emma protested, even as she yawned again. Natalie did not want them to leave. She scrambled for a reason to see them again, something that wouldn't sound desperate or weird. "This might be forward," she said, "but could I give you my number? In case you're ever in the neighborhood again, maybe we could grab coffee or something." Ryan looked at her for a long moment and she held her breath. Then he smiled. "I'd like that." They exchanged numbers, and as Natalie watched Ryan walk out of the diner with Emma's hand in his, she felt something shift inside her. It was terrifying and exhilarating all at once. Over the next few weeks, Natalie and Ryan started texting. It began with simple check-ins, Ryan thanking her again for lunch and Natalie sending Emma a picture of the drawing she had framed and hung in her office. Then the texts became more frequent, more personal. Ryan would send her funny anecdotes about Emma's antics at school. Natalie would tell him about difficult clients and boardroom politics. They discovered they both loved old movies, that they both lost their parents young, that they both sometimes felt like they were making everything up as they went along. Natalie found herself looking forward to his messages the way she used to look forward to Christmas as a child. Every notification made her heart jump, hoping it was him. Her assistant noticed she was smiling at her phone more often, and her business partner commented that she seemed happier lately. 3 weeks after their lunch, Ryan texted her on a Saturday morning. "Emma is at a birthday party for the next few hours. Any chance you're free for a walk? I know you're probably busy." Natalie looked at her calendar, which was packed with meetings and obligations she had scheduled months ago. Then she looked at Ryan's message again and made a decision. "I'm free," she typed back. "Where should I meet you?" They met at a park near the waterfront, a beautiful stretch of green space that Natalie had driven past 1,000 times but never actually visited. Ryan was waiting by the entrance in jeans and a dark blue Henley that made his eyes look more green than brown. He smiled when he saw her, and Natalie was glad she had changed out of her usual work clothes into something more casual. Dark jeans, a soft sweater, and boots instead of heels. "You look different," Ryan said as she approached. "Good different, relaxed." "I took your advice," Natalie admitted. "I decided to stop working weekends unless it's absolutely critical. I've been running myself into the ground." They started walking, and Natalie was struck by how easy it felt to be beside him. Ryan had a calm presence that made her feel settled in a way she rarely experienced. He pointed out different landmarks, told her stories about the neighborhood, and she found herself genuinely interested in all of it. "Tell me about Emma's mom," Natalie said eventually, "if that's not too personal." Ryan was quiet for a moment, his hands in his pockets as they walked. "Her name was Jennifer. We were young when we got together, maybe too young. When Emma was born, I think Jennifer realized she wasn't ready to be a mother. She tried for about a year, but she was miserable. One day she told me she couldn't do it anymore, and she left. Signed over full custody, moved to another state. She sends a card on Emma's birthday sometimes, but that's it." "I'm sorry," Natalie said softly. "Don't be," Ryan said, and there was no anger in his voice, only acceptance. "Jennifer did the right thing in her own way. Emma deserves a parent who wants to be there, not someone forcing themselves to stay out of obligation. And honestly, being Emma's dad is the best thing that ever happened to me. She's my everything." The devotion in his voice made Natalie's throat tight. She had dated plenty of men over the years, successful men with impressive resumes and expensive cars. But none of them had ever looked at anything the way Ryan looked when he talked about his daughter. "What about you?" Ryan asked. "Any serious relationships in your past?" Natalie laughed, but it sounded hollow. "Nothing that lasted. I was always too focused on work. And the men I dated were usually the same way. We'd make plans and cancel them, prioritize meetings over dinners, and eventually just drift apart. I think I convinced myself that was normal, that successful people just didn't have time for real relationships." "Do you still believe that?" Ryan asked, and there was something in his tone that made her look at him. "No," she said honestly. "I think I was using work as an excuse to avoid getting hurt. If you never really let someone in, they can't disappoint you." They had reached a small pier that jutted out into the water. Ryan leaned against the railing, looking out at the boats bobbing in the marina. Natalie stood beside him, close enough that she could feel the warmth radiating from his body. "Can I ask you something?" Ryan said. "Why did you give me your number that day at the diner? I've been trying to figure it out. We're from completely different worlds, Natalie. You're this successful CEO who probably has a dozen men in suits trying to take you to fancy restaurants. I'm a single dad who's currently unemployed. What could you possibly want with someone like me?" The vulnerability in his question caught her off guard. She turned to face him fully and realized he genuinely did not understand. "You want to know what I see when I look at you?" Natalie said. "I see a man who shows up for his daughter every single day, who makes her feel safe and loved and important. I see someone who can draw perfect directions on the back of a receipt, who reads about imposter syndrome in his spare time, who can make 2 hours disappear without any of us noticing. I see someone real, Ryan. Someone who doesn't play games or put on an act. Do you have any idea how rare that is?" Ryan was looking at her with an expression she could not quite read. "I think about you," he said quietly. "More than I should, probably. When Emma is asleep and the apartment is quiet, I read our texts over again. You make me laugh. You make me think. And when we're together, I feel like I can breathe properly for the first time in years." Natalie's heart was pounding so hard she was sure he must be able to hear it. "I think about you too," she admitted. "All the time. I kept driving through your neighborhood hoping I'd run into you again. I was too nervous to just ask you out directly." "Really?" Ryan looked genuinely surprised. "You're nervous around me?" "Terrified," Natalie confessed with a shaky laugh. "You're the first person in years who's made me feel something beyond just comfortable companionship. And Emma is amazing, which somehow makes it even scarier. Because if this becomes something, I'm not just risking my own heart. There's a little girl involved, and her well-being matters more than anything." Ryan reached out and took her hand, his fingers warm and calloused against her smooth palm. "I'm scared too," he said. "Emma is my first priority always. If I'm going to let someone into our lives, I need to know they're serious, that they understand what they're signing up for." "I understand," Natalie said, squeezing his hand, And I want to be serious. I want to try this if you do. Ryan smiled then, that full, genuine smile that transformed his entire face. Yeah, he said. I want to try this. He leaned down, moving slowly enough that she could pull away if she wanted to, and kissed her. It was gentle and sweet and sent electricity racing down her spine. When they finally broke apart, Natalie felt like the world had shifted on its axis. They spent the rest of the afternoon talking and walking and stealing kisses when the park was empty enough. Natalie learned that Ryan's favorite movie was The Shawshank Redemption, that he made incredible pancakes, that he was terrified of spiders despite his size. He learned that she had a sweet tooth for chocolate, that she had wanted to be a dancer as a child, that she still felt guilty about not spending more time with her grandmother before she passed away. When Ryan's phone buzzed with a message that the birthday party was ending soon, Natalie felt a sharp pang of disappointment. She wasn't ready for their time together to end. "Can I see you again?" Ryan asked. "Soon. How about tomorrow?" Natalie suggested. "Maybe you and Emma could come to my place for dinner. I should warn you, I'm not much of a cook, but I make a mean lasagna." "Emma loves lasagna," Ryan said, "and I'd love to see where you live, your world." "It's not that impressive," Natalie said, though she was already mentally cataloging everything in her apartment that might need child-proofing. "It's just a place." "It's your place," Ryan said. "That makes it interesting to me." The next evening, Natalie cleaned her apartment 3 times before deciding it looked too sterile and messing it up a little bit on purpose. She put away some of the more expensive art pieces and the crystal vases that Emma might accidentally break. She made lasagna from her grandmother's old recipe, the one thing she actually could cook well, and set the table with her normal dishes instead of the fine china she used for business dinners. When the doorbell rang, she took a deep breath and checked her reflection one more time. She had dressed casually again, in soft pants and a simple blouse, her hair down around her shoulders. She wanted Ryan and Emma to feel comfortable, not like they were visiting some intimidating executive. Emma bounded through the door the moment Natalie opened it, her eyes wide as she took in the large apartment with its floor-to-ceiling windows and view of the city. "Wow," she breathed. "You live in the sky? 32nd floor," Natalie confirmed with a smile. "Pretty high up." Ryan followed his daughter inside, carrying a bottle of wine and looking slightly overwhelmed. Natalie could see him taking in the expensive furnishings, the modern artwork, the sheer space of it all. She felt a flicker of anxiety. What if this made him uncomfortable? What if he decided they were too different after all? "This is beautiful," Ryan said, and he sounded sincere rather than intimidated. "You have great taste." "Thank you," Natalie said, relieved. "Come on, let me give you the tour." Emma was fascinated by everything, from the chrome appliances in the kitchen to the huge bathtub in the master bathroom. She asked a million questions, and Natalie found herself charmed by the little girl's curiosity and enthusiasm. "Can I see your bedroom?" Emma asked, and Ryan immediately jumped in. "Emma, that's private. You can't just ask to see someone's bedroom." "It's okay," Natalie said. "I don't mind." Her bedroom was the one space in the apartment that felt truly personal. The walls were a soft gray, and she had photos on her dresser of her late parents, her grandmother, her friends from college. Emma studied each photo with serious attention. "You don't have any kids," Emma observed. "No, I don't," Natalie said gently, "but I'd like to someday." "Do you have a husband?" "Emma," Ryan said warningly, but Natalie just laughed. "No husband," she said. "I've been waiting for the right person." Emma seemed to consider this. "My dad doesn't have a wife," she announced. "Just me." "Well, you're pretty great company," Natalie said. "Your dad is lucky to have you." They ate dinner at Natalie's dining table, which had probably never been used for such a casual, happy meal. Emma chattered away about school and her friends, and Ryan added details and gentle corrections. Natalie found herself relaxing into the domesticity of it all, the simple pleasure of sharing a meal with people she cared about. After dinner, they watched a movie together. some animated film about talking animals that Emma loved. Natalie sat on the couch with Ryan beside her and Emma curled up between them. At some point during the movie, Emma fell asleep with her head on Natalie's lap, and Natalie looked down at the sleeping child with a feeling she couldn't quite name. "Sorry," Ryan whispered. "She had a big day yesterday." "She crashes hard sometimes." "Don't apologize," Natalie whispered back. "This is perfect." Ryan's hand found hers in the space between them, and they sat like that for the rest of the movie, connected in the dim light of her living room, with Emma sleeping peacefully between them. When the movie ended, Ryan carefully lifted Emma into his arms. She stirred slightly but didn't wake, her small hand clutching his shirt. Natalie walked them to the door, reluctant to see them go. "Thank you for tonight," Ryan said softly. "Emma had a great time, so did I." "Me too," Natalie said. She reached up and touched his face, tracing the line of his jaw. "I really like you, Ryan, both of you." "We really like you too," Ryan said. He leaned down and kissed her, careful not to wake Emma, and Natalie felt that same electric connection she'd felt at the park. After they left, Natalie's apartment felt emptier than it ever had before. She cleaned up the dinner dishes, smiling at the kid-sized fork Emma had used and the crumbs that littered the table. For the first time, her perfect, pristine apartment felt too sterile, too lonely. She wanted the mess and noise and life that came with Ryan and Emma. Over the following weeks, Natalie and Ryan saw each other as often as their schedules allowed. Sometimes it was just the two of them, stolen hours where they could talk and kiss and explore this growing thing between them. Other times, Emma was there, and Natalie learned the rhythms of their little family, the inside jokes and bedtime rituals, and the way Ryan could diffuse Emma's tantrums with patient humor. Natalie met Ryan's friends, other fathers from Emma's school and guys he had worked with over the years. They were welcoming but clearly protective of Ryan, checking Natalie out with friendly but assessing glances. She understood. Ryan was one of the good ones, and they wanted to make sure she knew what she had. Ryan met Natalie's business partner, Marco, who pulled Natalie aside after dinner and said, "He's different from your usual type, in a good way. He actually listens when you talk." 4 months into their relationship, Ryan finally got a job offer with a good construction company. The relief on his face when he told Natalie made her chest tight. She knew he had been stressed about money, even though he tried not to show it. She had wanted to help, had even started to offer once or twice, but she knew he would see it as charity rather than support. So she had stayed quiet and just been there, a sounding board when he needed to vent, a source of encouragement when the job hunt got discouraging. "I'm so proud of you," she told him, and kissed him until they were both breathless. "Things are looking up," Ryan said, holding her close. "I can breathe a little easier now, maybe even take Emma on a real vacation this summer." "Where would you go?" Natalie asked. "Probably the beach," Ryan said. "She's never seen the ocean. Can you believe that? 6 years old and she's never been to the beach." Natalie had an idea then, something that had been forming in her mind for weeks, but she had been too nervous to suggest. "What if we all went together?" she asked. "You and Emma and me. I have a beach house in the Outer Banks that I never use. It just sits there empty most of the year. We could spend a week there this summer." Ryan pulled back slightly to look at her. "That's a big step," he said carefully. "A vacation together." "I know," Natalie said, "but I'm ready for big steps if you are. I love spending time with you and Emma, and honestly, that house shouldn't go to waste. My grandmother left it to me, and she would have loved the idea of it being filled with laughter and a happy family." "A happy family," Ryan repeated, and something in his expression made Natalie's breath catch. "Is that what we are?" "I think we could be," Natalie said, "if you want that too." Ryan kissed her then, deep and thorough and full of promise. "Yeah," he said when they finally broke apart, "I want that too." They told Emma about the beach trip the next day, and her excitement was infectious. She talked about nothing else for weeks, asking questions about the ocean and sand and seashells, until Ryan and Natalie were both laughing helplessly. The vacation was everything Natalie had hoped it would be and more. Emma fell in love with the ocean immediately, shrieking with delight as the waves crashed around her ankles. Ryan taught her to build sandcastles, and Natalie took what felt like 1,000 pictures of the two of them covered in sand and grinning at the camera. At night, after Emma was asleep in the guest room, Ryan and Natalie would sit on the back deck with glasses of wine, listening to the waves and talking about everything and nothing. It felt natural and right in a way that Natalie had never experienced before. "I could get used to this," Ryan said one night, his arm around her shoulders as they watched the moon rise over the water. "Me too," Natalie said. She was quiet for a moment, then added, "I love you, Ryan. I've been wanting to say it for a while now, but I was scared it was too soon." Ryan turned to face her, his eyes intense in the moonlight. "It's not too soon," he said. "I love you too, Natalie, so much that it scares me sometimes. You've turned my whole world upside down in the best possible way." They made love that night with a tenderness that brought tears to Natalie's eyes. It felt like a promise, like they were sealing something sacred between them. The next morning, Emma came running into the kitchen where Natalie was making pancakes, Ryan's recipe that he had taught her. "Natalie, do you love my dad?" Emma asked with the blunt directness of a 6-year-old. Natalie glanced at Ryan, who was watching from the doorway with curiosity. She crouched down to Emma's level. "Yes," she said honestly. "I love your dad very much." "Good," Emma said, nodding seriously. "He smiles more since he met you, and he sings in the shower again, which he stopped doing after Mom left." Ryan's face went slightly red, but he was smiling. "Thanks for sharing that, Em. Do you love me too?" Emma asked Natalie, and there was a slight vulnerability in her voice that made Natalie's heart ache. "I do," Natalie said, and realized it was completely true. She had fallen in love with this bright, funny, sweet little girl just as surely as she had fallen for her father. "You're amazing, Emma." "I love spending time with you." Emma hugged her tight, and over the little girl's shoulder, Natalie saw Ryan mouth the words, "Thank you." When they returned from the beach, Natalie felt like something fundamental had shifted. They weren't just dating anymore. They were building something real, something lasting. Ryan and Emma started spending more nights at her apartment, and Natalie found herself keeping kid-friendly food in her fridge and a few of Emma's toys in her living room. 6 months after their first kiss, Ryan invited Natalie to his apartment for the first time. It was small, a modest 2-bedroom in an older building, but it was clean and comfortable and full of warmth. Emma's artwork covered the refrigerator, and there were photos everywhere, chronicling her growth from a tiny baby to the vibrant child she was now. "It's not fancy," Ryan said, and Natalie could hear the slight defensiveness in his voice. "It's perfect," Natalie said firmly. "It's a home, Ryan." A real home. That's worth more than all the expensive furniture in the world. They had dinner at Ryan's scratched but sturdy kitchen table, and Natalie felt more at peace than she had in her designer apartment. After Emma went to bed, Ryan pulled out a bottle of wine and they sat on his worn couch, Natalie tucked against his side. "I've been thinking," Ryan said slowly, "about the future, about us." Natalie's heart started beating faster. "What about us?" "I want to do this right," Ryan said. "I want to give you the life you deserve, but I also need to be realistic about what I can provide. I'm never going to be able to buy you a penthouse or take you on expensive vacations to Europe. I'm a construction worker, Natalie. I make a decent living, but it's nothing compared to what you make." "I don't care about that," Natalie said, sitting up to face him. "Ryan, I have money, more money than I know what to do with, honestly. But money doesn't make me happy. You make me happy. Emma makes me happy. Sitting in this apartment, eating takeout makes me happier than any 5-star restaurant ever has." "I know you say that," Ryan said, "but what about in 5 years? 10? What if you wake up one day and realize you've tied yourself to someone who can't keep up with your lifestyle?" Natalie took his face in her hands, making him look at her. "Listen to me. I don't want someone to keep up with my lifestyle. I want someone to build a life with. A real life, with Sunday morning pancakes and movie nights and stupid arguments about whose turn it is to do the dishes. I want someone who makes me laugh and challenges me and reminds me that there's more to life than quarterly earnings reports. I want you, Ryan, just you, exactly as you are. Ryan's eyes were suspiciously bright. You're sure? I have never been more sure of anything in my life, Natalie said. He kissed her then, deep and desperate and full of emotion. When they finally broke apart, Ryan was smiling. I was going to wait, he said. I had this whole plan to do it right, to save up for a ring and take you somewhere special, but I can't wait anymore. He stood up and disappeared into his bedroom, returning with a small velvet box. Natalie's breath caught in her throat. This was my grandmother's, Ryan said, opening the box to reveal a simple gold band with a small but beautiful diamond. It's not fancy, and I know you could buy yourself something 10 times bigger, but it means something to me. It's been in my family for 3 generations. Ryan, Natalie whispered, tears streaming down her face. Natalie Torres, Ryan said, dropping to one knee in his small living room. Will you marry me? Will you be my wife and Emma's stepmom and the person I build a life with? Yes, Natalie said, laughing and crying at the same time. Yes, yes, 1,000 times yes. He slipped the ring on her finger and it fit perfectly. Natalie pulled him up and kissed him, pouring all her love and joy and hope into it. Can we tell Emma? Natalie asked when they finally broke apart. First thing in the morning, Ryan promised, but for tonight, I just want to hold you and try to believe that this is real. They fell asleep on the couch, wrapped around each other, and Natalie dreamed of beaches and pancakes and a little girl with hazel eyes. Emma's reaction to the engagement was everything Natalie had hoped for. She screamed with excitement and immediately started planning the wedding, insisting that she would be the flower girl and that there had to be chocolate cake. Can I call you Mom? Emma asked shyly later that day. Natalie felt tears prick her eyes again. If you want to, she said. I would be honored. I want to, Emma said. I've never had a mom before, not a real one who stays. I'm staying, Natalie promised, forever and ever. The wedding planning was a blur of activity, though Natalie insisted on keeping it simple, despite her assistant's attempts to turn it into a massive society event. They got married on the beach at the Outer Banks house 6 months later, with just close friends and family in attendance. Emma stole the show as the flower girl, her white dress billowing in the ocean breeze as she scattered petals with serious concentration. Ryan cried when he saw Natalie walking toward him in her simple white dress, her hair loose around her shoulders. She wasn't wearing a veil or carrying an elaborate bouquet. She looked like herself, only happier than Ryan had ever seen her. You're beautiful, he whispered when she reached him. You're not so bad yourself, she whispered back, making him laugh even as tears ran down his face. They exchanged vows they had written themselves, promising to love each other through good times and bad, to support each other's dreams, to be partners in every sense of the word. When the officiant pronounced them husband and wife, Emma cheered louder than anyone, running forward to hug both of them at once. The reception was held in the backyard of the beach house, with string lights and a local band playing. Natalie danced with Ryan, with Emma, with her business partner Marco, who made a toast about how he had never seen Natalie so genuinely happy. Ryan's friends from work made toasts about how lucky Ryan was and how they approved of Natalie. Emma gave her own toast, short and sweet. I love my new mom and I'm glad we're a family now. Later that night, after Emma had been put to bed in the guest room by Ryan's mother who had flown in for the wedding, Ryan and Natalie stood on the deck looking out at the ocean. The same deck where Ryan had first told Natalie he loved her. Mrs. Walker, Ryan said, pulling her close. How does it feel? Perfect, Natalie said. Absolutely perfect, though I'm keeping Torres professionally. Hope that's okay. Of course, Ryan said. I wouldn't want you to change anything about yourself. I've already changed, Natalie said. Thanks to you, I'm happier, more balanced. I actually leave work at a reasonable hour now. I cook dinner and read bedtime stories, and I can't remember the last time I felt stressed about quarterly projections. You're the same person you always were, Ryan said. You just let yourself relax a little. They made love that night as husband and wife, slow and tender and full of whispered promises. Afterward, lying in Ryan's arms, Natalie thought about the lost woman in a rental car who had stopped to ask for directions almost a year ago. She had been looking for the financial district, but she had found something infinitely more valuable instead. 6 months after the wedding, Natalie and Ryan decided to sell both of their places and buy a house together. A real family home in a neighborhood halfway between the downtown business district and Ryan's old area. It had 4 bedrooms, a big backyard, and a kitchen with enough space for all of them to cook together. Emma loved having her own room that she got to decorate herself, and Natalie loved watching the house fill up with the comfortable clutter of family life. Sports equipment in the garage, finger paintings on the fridge, Ryan's work boots by the door, her heels kicked off in the entryway. It was a far cry from her old sterile penthouse, and she wouldn't have changed it for anything. They settled into a comfortable routine. Ryan would get up early for work, kissing Natalie goodbye before heading out to whatever construction site he was working on. Natalie would take Emma to school on her way to the office, the two of them singing along to the radio and talking about what Emma wanted to be when she grew up. Natalie had cut back her hours at work, delegating more and trusting her team to handle things without her constant oversight. Evenings were for family. They'd eat dinner together, Ryan cooking most nights because he was better at it, though Natalie could now manage more than just lasagna. They'd help Emma with homework, watch television together, read stories before bed. It was simple and mundane and absolutely wonderful. On their first anniversary, Ryan took Natalie back to the diner where they'd had lunch together for the first time. Dolores, the waitress, remembered them and made a big fuss, insisting their meal was on the house. "I can't believe it's only been a year," Natalie said, reaching across the table to take Ryan's hand. "It feels like you've been in my life forever." "Best year of my life," Ryan said. "Well, second best. The year Emma was born still tops it." "As it should," Natalie agreed with a smile. "I wouldn't want to compete with that." Ryan was quiet for a moment, his thumb tracing circles on her palm. "I've been thinking about something," he said. "Emma keeps asking if we're going to have more kids. She wants a little brother or sister." Natalie's heart skipped a beat. "What do you think about that?" "I think I'd love to have a baby with you," Ryan said, "if you want that." "I know you're busy with work, and pregnancy is a lot to ask, and we're already a family, so if you're happy with things as they are, that's okay too." "Ryan," Natalie said, tears pooling in her eyes, "I would love to have your baby. I've been hoping you'd want that too." Ryan grinned, that full, beautiful smile that still made her heart flutter. Yeah, she confirmed. "Let's do it. Let's have a baby." They started trying that night, and 3 months later, Natalie was staring at 2 pink lines on a pregnancy test in her office bathroom. She called Ryan immediately, unable to wait until she got home. "I'm pregnant," she said as soon as he answered. There was a moment of stunned silence, then Ryan whooped so loud she had to hold the phone away from her ear. "Really? Oh my God, Natalie, really?" "Really," she said, laughing and crying at the same time. "We're having a baby." They told Emma that weekend, sitting her down in the living room of their house. Emma listened with wide eyes as they explained that she was going to be a big sister. "A baby," Emma said, her voice full of wonder. A real baby," Ryan confirmed. "What do you think about that?" Emma launched herself at both of them, hugging as tight as her 7-year-old arms could manage. "I think it's the best thing ever. Can we name it Rainbow if it's a girl?" Natalie laughed. "We'll definitely consider that." The pregnancy was easier than Natalie had expected, despite her age. She was 34 now, which her doctor assured her was perfectly fine for a healthy pregnancy. She had some morning sickness in the first trimester, and she was tired all the time, but Ryan took care of everything. He made sure she ate properly, rubbed her feet when they swelled, talked to her belly every night before they went to sleep. Emma was the most devoted big sister in waiting that anyone had ever seen. She read books to Natalie's growing stomach, picked out tiny baby clothes with serious concentration, and asked a million questions about what the baby would be like. Will it like me? She asked one night, her hand on Natalie's belly where the baby was kicking. The baby will love you, Natalie assured her. You're going to be the best big sister in the whole world. They found out they were having a boy, and Ryan cried when they saw him on the ultrasound, this tiny perfect person they'd made together. That's our son, he kept saying, his voice full of awe. That's our son. They named him Nathan Walker after Natalie's late father. He was born on a sunny morning in May, after 10 hours of labor that Ryan coached her through with patience and encouragement. Emma was waiting in the hallway with Ryan's mother, and when they brought her in to meet her baby brother, her face lit up with pure joy. He's so small, she whispered, looking down at Nathan in Natalie's arms. Can I hold him? Of course, Natalie said, helping Emma get settled in the hospital chair before carefully placing Nathan in her arms. Ryan took approximately 100 photos of his 2 children together, his face glowing with happiness. That first week at home with a newborn was chaos, but it was the good kind of chaos. Nathan was a good baby, only fussing when he was hungry or needed changing. Emma was endlessly helpful, fetching diapers and blankets and singing to Nathan when he cried. Ryan took 2 weeks off work to be home with them, and Natalie fell even more in love with him as she watched him with their son. He was a natural father, patient and gentle and completely devoted. He'd wake up for the middle-of-the-night feedings before Natalie could even fully rouse herself, walking Nathan around the house and murmuring softly until the baby settled. He made sure Emma didn't feel left out, carving out special time just for her so she knew she was still important. You're amazing, Natalie told him one night, watching him rock Nathan back to sleep. I couldn't do this without you. Yes, you could, Ryan said, but I'm glad you don't have to. We're a team, remember? When Nathan was 3 months old and Natalie was cleared to go back to work, she made a decision that shocked everyone. She stepped down as CEO of her company, taking a position as a senior consultant instead. It meant less responsibility, more flexible hours, and time to actually be present for her family. Are you sure about this? Marco asked when she told him. You built this company from nothing. It's your baby. I have actual babies now, Natalie said with a smile. And a stepdaughter who needs me. The company will be fine without me at the helm. I'll still be here, still contributing, but I want to live my life, Marco. Really live it. It was the right decision. Natalie found that she was happier with less responsibility, that coming home at a reasonable hour to have dinner with her family mattered more than being the boss. She still did good work, still made important contributions, but it no longer consumed her entire identity. Emma thrived as a big sister, always eager to help with Nathan. She'd read him stories and show him her schoolwork and hold his hand when he got upset. Watching her with Nathan made Natalie's heart swell. This was family. This was what mattered. When Nathan was 6 months old, Ryan got a promotion at work to project manager. It came with a significant raise and better benefits, and Natalie could see how proud he was to be able to contribute more to their household finances. Not that it mattered to her. They'd long since combined their accounts, and she'd never cared about the disparity in their incomes, but she knew it mattered to Ryan. I can take care of my family, he said the night he got the promotion, holding Nathan while Emma showed Natalie a drawing she'd made at school. I can provide for all of you. You've always taken care of us, Natalie said, long before this promotion. You take care of us in 100 ways that have nothing to do with money. But she could see the satisfaction in his eyes, and she understood. It was important to him to feel like an equal partner, and if this promotion helped him feel that way, then she was thrilled for him. Life settled into a new rhythm, busier than before but full of love and laughter. There were hard days, of course. Days when Nathan wouldn't stop crying and Emma had a tantrum and Natalie was so tired she could barely think. Days when Ryan was stressed about work and Natalie had a difficult client and they snapped at each other over something trivial. But they always worked through it, always came back to each other. They'd learned to communicate, to ask for what they needed, to support each other through the difficult moments. It wasn't always perfect, but it was real and honest and worth fighting for. 2 years after Nathan was born, Emma was 9 and starting to develop her own interests and friendships. She was on a soccer team that Ryan coached, and Natalie would bring Nathan to every game, cheering from the sidelines. Emma was good at soccer, fast and determined, and Ryan was a patient coach who made sure every kid on the team felt valued. Nathan, at 2 years old, was a bundle of energy who looked exactly like Ryan but had Natalie's determined personality. He followed Emma everywhere, wanting to do everything his big sister did. Emma was patient with him most of the time, though she occasionally complained that he was annoying, which Natalie figured was pretty standard sibling behavior. "I can't believe this is my life," Natalie said one Sunday morning. They were all in the kitchen, Ryan making his famous pancakes while Emma set the table and Nathan sat in his high chair babbling to himself. It was chaotic and loud and absolutely wonderful. "Good life?" Ryan asked, coming over to kiss her. "Best life," Natalie confirmed. "I wouldn't change a single thing." That afternoon, they went to the park where Natalie and Ryan had first met, the same playground where Emma had been playing while Ryan sat on a bench back when he was just a stranger who gave her directions. So much had changed since then. So much had grown. "Daddy, push me," Emma called from the swings. "Me too," Nathan echoed, his vocabulary still limited but his enthusiasm unbounded. Ryan went to push both kids, and Natalie sat on that same bench where he'd been sitting the day they met. She watched her family, her husband and children, and felt overwhelming gratitude. She'd been lost that day, desperately searching for the financial district, running late for a meeting that had seemed so important at the time. But what she'd actually been searching for, without even knowing it, was this: family, love, home. All of it had started with a simple question about directions, a man who'd taken the time to help a frazzled stranger, a little girl on a jungle gym who'd changed everything. "What are you thinking about?" Ryan asked, sitting down beside her while Emma and Nathan played together under the watchful eye of another parent. "That day," Natalie said, leaning into him, "when I asked you for directions." "Best wrong turn you ever made," Ryan said with a smile. "The absolute best," Natalie agreed. "I was looking for success, for validation, for all these things I thought would make me happy, but what I really needed was you, both of you, now all 3 of you." "We needed you too," Ryan said, taking her hand. "Emma and we were doing okay before you came along, but you made us complete. You turned us from a family of 2 into a family of 4. You gave Emma a mother who loves her unconditionally. You give me a partner who challenges me and supports me and makes every day better. You gave me Nathan, which still blows my mind when I think about it. You gave us everything." Natalie kissed him soft and sweet, the kind of kiss that held years of love and trust and shared history. Emma made a gagging sound from the swings, but she was smiling. "Gross, you guys." She called, though there was no real complaint in her voice. She was used to her parents being affectionate by now. That night, after the kids were in bed and the house was quiet, Ryan and Natalie sat on their back porch with glasses of wine, enjoying the peaceful evening. "Do you ever miss it?" Ryan asked. "Your old life, the penthouse, the power lunches, being CEO," Natalie thought about it honestly. "Sometimes I miss the simplicity of only having to worry about myself," she admitted, "but I don't miss being alone. I don't miss coming home to an empty apartment and eating dinner by myself. I don't miss feeling like work was the only thing that mattered." "You've built something amazing," Ryan said. "Not just your company, though that's impressive too, but this, our family, our life. You've built something that's going to last." "We built it together," Natalie corrected. I couldn't have done any of this without you. You taught me how to slow down, how to prioritize what really matters. You showed me that success isn't just about money or titles or corner offices. It's about having people you love and who love you back. 3 years later, Emma was 12 and in middle school, navigating the complicated social dynamics and academic pressures with the confidence that came from having a strong support system at home. Nathan was 5 and starting kindergarten, a bright and curious boy who asked endless questions about everything. And Natalie and Ryan were stronger than ever, their relationship deepened by years of shared experiences and unwavering commitment to each other. They'd fallen into comfortable patterns, but they made sure never to take each other for granted. Date nights were sacred, even if they were just dinner at that same old diner where they'd had lunch together all those years ago. They still held hands, still kissed goodbye every morning, still found reasons to laugh together. Natalie's company had continued to thrive under Marco's leadership, and she still did consulting work that fulfilled her professionally without consuming her life. Ryan had become a senior project manager, overseeing major construction projects and mentoring younger workers. They were both successful in their careers, but more importantly, they were successful at building a life together. One Saturday morning, Emma came into the kitchen where Natalie was helping Nathan with a coloring project while Ryan made breakfast. "I have to do a project for school," Emma announced. "About someone who inspires me. Can I do it about you, Mom?" Natalie's throat got tight. Emma had started calling her mom that day after the engagement, and it still made her emotional every time she heard it. "Of course," Natalie managed, "but I'm not sure I'm very inspiring." "Are you kidding?" Emma said. "You started your own company. You're super smart and successful. But you also make time for us. You come to all my soccer games and help me with my homework, and you're just always there. That's inspiring." Later that day, as Natalie listened to Emma interview her for the school project, she realized how far she'd come. The woman who'd been racing through downtown years ago, frantic about a meeting, would barely recognize her life now. That woman had been driven and focused, but ultimately lonely, using work to fill a void she didn't even know she had. Now she had everything that mattered. A husband who loved her unconditionally, children who brought joy to every day, a home filled with warmth and laughter. She'd found success on her own terms, balance instead of burnout, love instead of loneliness. "How did you know Dad was the one?" Emma asked as part of her interview. Natalie thought back to that day at the playground, to Ryan's kindness to a lost stranger, to the way he'd looked at Emma with such obvious love. "He showed me who he was right from the start," Natalie said. "He was kind and patient and completely devoted to you. And when I got to know him better, I realized he was also smart and funny and the best partner I could ever ask for. He made me want to be better, to do better, to build a life that was about more than just work." "That's so romantic," Emma said with a smile. "Dad's going to love that you said all that." That night, after both kids were asleep, Ryan pulled Natalie into their bedroom and kissed her thoroughly. "Emma told me what you said," he murmured against her lips, "about how you knew I was the one." "All true," Natalie said, wrapping her arms around his neck. "Want to know how I knew you were the one?" Ryan asked. "Tell me." "That day at the diner, when Emma fell asleep during the movie and you just let her sleep on your lap, you didn't try to move her or act like she was an inconvenience. You just looked down at her with this expression like she was precious. That's when I knew. You weren't just interested in me, you were ready to love my daughter too, and that meant everything." They made love that night with the practiced ease of partners who knew each other's bodies intimately, but also with a tenderness that spoke of deeper connection. Years together had only intensified their attraction, deepened their love. Afterward, lying tangled together in their bed, Natalie thought about the journey that had brought them here. It had started with a simple question about directions, but it had led to so much more. A family, a home, a love story that was still being written every single day. "Thank you," she whispered into the darkness. "For what?" Ryan asked sleepily, pulling her closer. "For being exactly who you are," Natalie said. "For showing me what really matters. For giving me this beautiful life." "Right back at you," Ryan said, kissing her forehead. "You're the best thing that ever happened to us." Years continued to pass, bringing new challenges and new joys. Emma graduated from middle school and started high school, where she continued to excel in both academics and soccer. Nathan grew into a thoughtful, creative boy who loved building things with his dad and reading with his mom. Ryan and Natalie celebrated 10 years of marriage with a trip back to the Outer Banks, walking on the same beach where they'd gotten married and marveling at how much had changed and how much had stayed the same. Through it all, they remained committed to each other and to their family. They navigated Emma's teenage years together, supporting her through heartbreaks and disappointments while celebrating her triumphs. They watched Nathan discover his passion for engineering, clearly inheriting both his father's practical skills and his mother's analytical mind. Natalie never regretted the choices she'd made, the way she'd restructured her life to prioritize family over career advancement. The success she'd found in building a loving home mattered more than any business achievement ever could. And Ryan never doubted his worth in their partnership, secure in the knowledge that he contributed in ways that had nothing to do with income or status. On their 15th anniversary, sitting on their back porch under the stars while their teenage children slept inside, Ryan took Natalie's hand. "I asked you for directions once," Natalie said, echoing a joke they'd shared many times over the years. "Best directions I ever gave," Ryan replied with a smile. "You directed me right to where I needed to be," Natalie said. "To you, to Emma, to this life we've built together." "We've had a good run," Ryan said. "We're not done yet," Natalie said. "We've got decades ahead of us, watching Emma go to college and start her own life, watching Nathan grow up and figure out who he wants to be, maybe grandchildren someday." "Grandchildren," Ryan repeated with wonder. "That's a weird thought. We're not that old." "We're not," Natalie agreed, "but we've lived a lot of life together, good life. The best life." She leaned her head on his shoulder, feeling completely content. Somewhere in the city, maybe someone was lost and frantically searching for directions, racing toward a meeting they thought would change everything. Natalie had been that person once, and she'd found so much more than she'd been looking for. She'd found love. She'd found family. She'd found home. And it had all started with a simple question in a neighborhood she'd never been to before, to a man sitting on a park bench watching his daughter play. "I love you," she told Ryan, the words as true now as they'd been the first time she'd said them. "I love you too," Ryan replied. "Always have, always will." And in that moment, with the stars overhead and her husband beside her and her children safe in their home, Natalie knew that she had everything she'd ever needed. Not the things she'd thought she wanted when she was young and ambitious and alone, but the things that actually mattered. Love, partnership, family, home. She'd been lost that day years ago, desperately searching for directions downtown. But what she'd actually found was the path to her future, guided by a kind stranger who would become her husband, her partner, her home, and that made all the difference.